All right. Welcome everybody to our second AWX Open Office Hours. As you can see on the screen, we have an agenda here. I'm going to do a welcome. Gundalo is going to do a quick monologue. And then hopefully we have Miles on. I think I saw him to talk about Helm. And then Phillips D6 to talk about the injecting complex extra vars. We have an update, some discussion, and then Hal's going to do some call to actions at the end. So with that, welcome again, and Gundalo, go for it.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, this is just a quick update. So we're going to be changing a bit of the code base. So at the moment, we in each of the products or the tools, so controller, hub, insights, analytics, they have sort of their UI component in their own repo. So in the tower, controller repo, we have in the AWX repo, we've got our UI stuff embedded. We're going to sort of make a central UI repository, pull that code out and get it common across all of the different projects. Just a heads up that that's happening. We're sort of getting the repository and bits set up at the moment. Will obviously be open source. Details we'll put in the next office hours when we've got something that'll be next year, and in the bullhorn. So no action at the moment, just sort of heads up that things will be changing around a bit. The repo will be open source, so we hope for those people with sort of UI and graphic skills, we really welcome you to get involved there. But yeah, more details will be shared as we have them. Thanks.
And as we embark on this journey of moving the UI repo, rest assured, we will still be able to build AWX with the repo. So for people that's using our upstream, no worries. It's not like we are removing the UI from AWX, it's just moving to another repo. Our current understanding, and as we going forward, we will make sure that we continue to provide the ability to use our project the way that everyone's been accustomed to. That's it.
Cool. So it doesn't look like Christian Adams has been able to join yet, but I believe Lila, you had some questions for Miles, and Miles, this is your time to talk about all the great Helm work you've been doing with AWX Operator.
Sure. I can introduce just kind of, I guess, the general stuff first, or we can jump into questions first. What works better for you guys?
Either way.
Okay, cool.
Miles, would you mind introducing yourself? I heard that you are the unofficial maintainer of our Helm integration for AWX Operator. I just wanted to, give a moment and give thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a computer science student studying. I'm currently in my 4th year, and I guess picked up last spring on some work that had been done, some initial work that had been done to take the kind of the customized build and copy it over to a Helm chart. Unfortunately, I don't remember the person responsible for those initial commits, but that's really kind of what launched this process. And so kind of what I've been trying to help do, or I guess, the first thing I contributed was creating a template for the AWX resource that would let people configure the operator basically through a Helm values file. So trying to kind of bring over some of the configuration functionality of the operator into a Helm chart. For anyone not that familiar with Helm, the benefit of it is that it's kind of like the de facto package manager for Kubernetes. So, the idea is that anyone can, anyone, especially if you're not familiar with Kubernetes, anyone can kind of pull down the chart and install it onto their cluster without a lot of additional work. And it's also really easy to configure. So that's kind of been my goal, is kind of setting up the bare bones structure for, making that happen. And I think there are a couple of road bumps worth talking about, but I'm happy to answer questions first.
Well, I guess I can go ahead and share my questions for you, Miles. Thank you so much for being here and for being willing to do that. This is a particular issue that we came across during a community PR triage, and I will go ahead and link it in the chat. So I had brought this to the attention of Christian Adams, and he looked at it and gave me some feedback, and we wanted to bring it to you since it looks like there's more research that will need to be done here before we can address the particular issue. So the issue in question is that previous Helm chart versions are not available, and it looks like, based on what we've seen, the culprit is the stage workflow that we use to prep the draft releases and container builds. And let's see here. So basically, Christian had asserted that we would need to possibly move where we're running the make target, possibly run it twice, or modify the make target, break it out into one that gets called separately, so you can call just the bit that's needed. And before we can try the test changes in a full workflow, probably be a good idea to start playing with the make Helm index target in a local branch, and seeing how it affects index.yaml. So that's essentially where we are right now with our research, and we just wanted to see if you had any other input while you were here.
Sure. I guess as it relates to the Helm index target, from what I could see in the second link, which is the promote pipeline, I didn't see that target being called. I just see make Helm package being called. But I guess actually I do see the make Helm index at the bottom. I think that, it's worth noting that the reason we have this problem is effectively because we build the Helm chart at the end. A lot of kind of more official Helm charts use the kind of chart releaser workflow, which is kind of straight from the Helm maintainers. The limitation of that, of course, is that this chart is kind of pulled together at the end versus being within the repo, and that affects chart releasers' ability to detect changes and push out a new version of the chart. So given everything that you've said, I agree. It seems like there needs more research to identify the issue, and I guess it's a little tricky to try to find, just because obviously this is the promotion pipeline. So I guess it would be nice to set up an environment where we can run this more regularly and just see what package is outputted, which is definitely possible to do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
I think with the fork, this you should be able to execute through the flow in a fork, right? So a couple of files you change to make sure that we are not pushing to the where this repo is pushing to. But yeah.
Yeah. I think, I guess my feeling on this is that before or in at the same time while we work through this issue, it is worth evaluating I guess the way that the Helm chart is currently built, in addition to kind of two other issues that come up. One of them, I believe I linked it in the image discussion, was just someone asking whether they can change the image tag. That's another limitation of the Helm chart, because it basically just pulls from customized. There's just a customized build there. So I guess some things that are worth just kind of throwing out there, even if they get immediately shot down, are is it worth considering pivoting to storing the Kubernetes resources directly in Helm, and maybe natively using chart releaser? Is it worth also potentially spinning off the Helm chart in its own repo so that it can kind of its full version can kind of live in code? And obviously the build would still have to occur. That would be cross repo. That's not necessarily ideal, but I think this kind of emerged just as one person created that make target, and then there's been some iteration on it. But obviously there are some kinks in this system just because it's not like a native Helm workflow, I would say.
Just opening the floor to the community members. Has anyone run into any limitations with our current Helm-based workflow? Anything specific that you guys are looking for? Yeah, I did see yesterday on Element that someone was asking if they can override the, I think, the RBAC proxy image. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
currently you will have to rebuild, modify the customize and rebuild the Helm chart in order to make this change rather than using a parameter with the Helm chart.
Yeah, I linked one of the issues. There may be more, but that's one that relates to kind of the question of how do I customize this in the Helm chart?
Gotcha. Here's what I'm thinking, right? I think we can put up a top level issue and try to link the various requests from like the Helm related into it, and then we can bring it back here for discussion on what improvements should we make to Helm and our Helm workflow, and what's the impact on the repo. Ideally, we would not want to diverge our Helm and our operator-based, like the customized-based deployment too much. The reason why we use customize is because it is the it is what operator SDK provided. Like we didn't start that directory, right? That directory was a part of the templating function for like a part of the scaffolding that operator SDK provided us.
Yeah, I think one important note too there, because it is really key, is that, you know, given that this is an operator that also, you know, calls up some important design decisions that need to be considered, you know, one of the realities is that Helm charts and operators can have overlapping functionality in terms of creating new resources. And that's kind of, you know, there was a ticket I had where I talked about this, where, you know, regardless of the direction you go with the Helm chart, in general, we want the division between this is created, you know, you request the operator to create this, it creates this, versus this is a Helm template that's being run. Those are, you know, that's a very important consideration to have, just because you could get into a kind of a world where suddenly people are expecting resources to be created not through the operator, but through the Helm chart. I see Christian Adams joined, so that was just the last point I wanted to make on that.
And Miles, yeah, and I completely agree. I think that as much as we can, we should, you know, we should rely on the operator to do as much as possible, and that way there's you know, both communities, the community that uses the Helm chart to deploy and the community that only uses like make, deploy, or customize, or operator hub. You know, we're using as much of the same bits as possible, so that yeah, it's easier for support and maintenance. So so yeah, I kind of branching off of that, what are the main things that you see the Helm chart wanting to like grow and be able to do that wouldn't overlap with the AWX operator?
I think there are really very few. I think some of them are I guess one of the main things I've noticed is, like, when people ask, you know, going back to this ingress spec issue, can this ingress be created or whatever? I think we need to be really clear, to your point, that all of this, you know, the Helm values feed directly into an AWX resource, which is created by the operator. I think the only feature that stood out to me as something that's not created by the operator, just in kind of the general use case of deploying AWX, was the Postgres secret. And I don't even know, you know, how widely that's used, because obviously people have different secret management tools. But I think that's maybe one clear-cut example where, you know, you may want to configure your Postgres secret. I know the operator, you know, can create a default secret if one isn't provided. But honestly, I don't see too much.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not secure. The point would be, you know, I mean, I don't use this workflow for my secret management, but the point would be you could set a value at the command line and pass it in. That's not, again, the most secure workflow. Like, I don't think that that's ideal, but really, I think that the main, like, I don't think that there's a lot that we want the Helm chart to do on its own. I think we want to feed it into the operator. I think the only limitation we see right now is where people can't configure the template files that the Helm chart uses. I think in a dream world, they would be able to. Those would all be able to be configured in the values file. But I don't know that that's compatible with the idea of keeping all the code the same, which I completely understand the motivation for.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm thinking like for ingress, for that example, I think that, you know, if we can work that into the templating for our ingress.yaml.j2 that the operator uses, that would be kind of the way forward. So cool. Yeah, I think that's great. I'm glad we hashed that out because I think that that's a good plan moving forward. And we might want to just find a place to say that that like this is kind of our approach, so that other people looking at the code down the line, you know, have a clear indication of what our intentions are.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think when I first wrote the README within the Helm starter, there was, you know, I had some mention of that, but I think, you know, since we've had those conversations and this conversation, it's definitely worth reiterating or making more clear. I think that the only other limitation that, you know, we were discussing is just the ease of the workflow of promoting a new Helm chart image. I think that that's gotten a little tricky and we need to debug. I think that was the only other, you know, the only other kind of question in terms of how should we go about improving that workflow.
You're talking about like come release time?
Yeah, I mean, currently there's, you know, I think we've had recurring issues where the index YAML isn't, you know, appended. It's just kind of overwritten. And so I know that there was a, you know, a make index target that was created that seemed promising, but it seems like there are still some more things to figure out there. So that's why I brought up the idea of, well, you know, like if the Helm chart lived in its own repo, but still built off of the operator, that would be easy.
By the way, after Miles, I know that like right now it's probably around final time and you're probably busy, but like once stuff calms down a little bit, if you want to work with us on addressing this Helm chart release issue, we're certainly open for like peer programming sessions and other stuff. Like just hit us up on Matrix. We will be happy to do this. And this, by the way, this invitation extends to anyone that's in the community. If you guys, if anyone wants to hop on video to work on something with us, to work on an issue together, please don't be afraid to reach out.
Yeah, seconded there for sure. And actually, Miles, while you're talking about that Helm issue, I mean, I don't want to derail the whole meeting, so reel me in how if you need to. But Lila and I were trying to wrap our heads around the problem. It looks like, in a nutshell, my read is that Helm index make target does the right thing, but it needs to be run in a different place, like later on. Is that your read as well, Miles?
I think that's probable. I think I agree that it looks like it does the right thing. So it's probably an issue with it potentially not being pushed, or, you know, just not running in the right place. From what I see right now, in the develop branch, it is run kind of at the end of the promotion, you know, Helm release pipeline. So I don't know if it's necessarily an issue with it running later, or, you know, with the changes not, or, you know, if something else is being called after that is causing a problem. I think, you know, one interesting question would be, do we just want to call this target implicitly inside of the Helm package target? Just would kind of simplify the process if that does actually fix things. But again, I don't know if that causes a problem with the, you know, upload in the middle. Yeah, I definitely think the issue is either, you know, just evaluating that target or evaluating when it's called.
Okay, cool. Yeah, then that's good. We're on the right track, and we just need to look at it a little longer and So I'll probably, you know, Lila or I will probably put up a draft PR and link you and kind of get your thoughts on it. But yeah, thanks for that.
Cool. Yeah, thank you guys.
I guess time for next topic.
Yeah, thanks for that. Great discussion all. So the next topic we had, Phillips D6 opened a PR for injecting complex variables, and he was looking to get some feedback and discussion around that. I'll go ahead and open up the PR and then open up the floor for discussion. Phillips, do you want to give a quick summary of what you're doing?
Before
Sure,
we start, Phillips, would you mind introduce yourself a little bit?
Oh, not at all. I tried to do that before, but my headset was stealing my audio. Yeah, I'm actually a former manager of an automation team in our company. So we were using AWX in production for probably about 5 or 6 years, and occasionally the topic came up that we wanted to have complex vars pushed into credentials, and my answer to our customers was always like, you just can't do that. But I did find that I'm no longer managing that team. I moved on into our cloud infrastructure management team. But I still maintain quite an attachment to AWX and Ansible, so I still like to stay on the topics. But yeah, that's my background. I'm still involved in the cloud, but less directly under the Ansible AWX automation. But yeah, so if I just dive into this topic, there's actually an issue that I linked there that was from 3.5 years ago from another user who wanted to inject some nested variables from their credentials, and we're also told you can't do that. And a solution was discussed, and they said it would be quite hairy to do so. I implemented the solution, and that's why we want to talk about how hairy it is. It actually wasn't hard to introduce the code. You see in the PR, I have all the code there to do the work. What actually is causing me a problem right now is the validation, because the AWX validates the model of the extra vars that are coming in from the credential, and it's not allowing you to insert complex nested variables in your injector. Unfortunately, the JSON schema I'm not an expert on, and I'm finding it difficult to describe the recursive relationship that you would need to do in the JSON schema validator. Before I really kind of dive into that and focus on that more, I just wanted to get some feedback. Is this worth pursuing? Is this something other people see a need for? It is challenging to the validator, but the code is already there. I've tested the code itself, but I can't test it yet in the AWX UI because of the validator. There's 2 levels to this. First of all, that first link there in my summary to the info blocks collection, it's not uncommon for different collections and modules to get their authentication information in a nested object. Normally, Ansible provides those as flat variables. You get your username, you get your password. But Infoblox one, for example, and others actually take a auth block, and then inside that auth block, they have their username, their API key, their host, and things like that. So the base requirement to just be able to inject that directly from a credential would be nice. The workaround for that is basically to take in the flat variables from a credential type, and then in the AWX extra vars field, dump them in a nested object there. But it would be more convenient to describe that block directly in the injector type so that you wouldn't have to do that in every single job template. The second level is if we had the ability to make the keys of our extra vars templatable, then we could have dynamic variables populated into job templates. And the canonical case for that for me is to be able to have a credential type that is designed to produce authentication information for, let's say, Bitbucket. We have several internal Bitbucket servers. I want to be able to do credentials that target both of them. We can't do that in AWX. Once you have a credential type that's targeting Bitbucket, you can only have one of those in your job template. Of course, there are several workarounds. You can choose to divide your job up into several different playbooks and link them together with workflows, and then use one credential in one part of the workflow and the other credential in the other part of the workflow. So this is just kind of the scope of the topic. I just wanted to kind of hear from the community, see if this is something we should keep working on. But I originally we had a need to have a single playbook that talked to both Bitbuckets, and we simply couldn't do that with credential types. And I wanted to be able to support that. So the PR also not only allows you to nest variables in your extra vars, but it allows you to template the keys in your extra vars, so that you can potentially produce a production authentication, a test authentication block, or a staging authentication block. And then it makes it possible, with some further development, to be able to add multiple credential of the same type to a single job template, and be able to reference different environments of those. That's the part of the feature I'm less confident would be useful to the community, but I would be happy to get some feedback on that. Either way, even the base requirement is to get the JSON schema validation working, because that's going to be a recursive validator, and I couldn't quite figure that out. So that's my topic. Open for feedback.
In terms of the staging, like the different environments, have another solution around it, but basically I've seen it done other ways, but it's useful for various people when you have multiple environments, especially if you're configuring it as code. Maybe not in credential types, but it's definitely a valid pattern.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Alan, any comments?
I definitely think I see the value of having the ability to have multiple, and I know a lot of people have been requesting that. As for how people end up using it, that that's on them, right? Like if they want to use it for multiple environments or whatever, like that's not my type of thing. That's not how I would do it personally, but I definitely see like the use case and some people wanting that ability, and that would be fine. I think there's also but I do think that, people have definitely been asking for the ability to be able to have multiple of the same type, right? But then the question's always been, how do you differentiate them? But if you have the keys, like you're suggesting, that's definitely a way to go about it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other issues I've noticed is that, I work in a large company. We have a lot of internal systems and a ton of different APIs. So we either have a choice where we create 200 different credential types for each API that look the same. They have an API host, they have an API username, and an API password. They're all the same, but I have to create 200 different ones because they might need to talk between all of them. Or I can have a single credential type that takes in an API host, a username, and a password, and a field that says, what's the key? What's the prefix? What's the API you're using? And then I create those credentials in the injector under that key, so that when you want to talk to my API 1, you go to that block to get your username and password. You go to API 2 to get your username and password for that. And that way, I don't have to create 200 different credential types. I just have one credential type, and it is a generic API key credential type.
I guess I have one question. How are you thinking about having this work in the UI for the user to add all those different?
Well, see, Yeah, that's one of the issues, which I haven't even dived into yet, which is that in the AWX UI, once you select a credential of a specific type, when you go to add another one, you don't even see that one because you already have it out there. So the logic there where AWX eliminates your existing credential types from the list when you go to select one would need to be revised. The UI I see doesn't really change anything. You go to the same credential selector. It's just that now you can continually select the same credentials.
Would you, or would you just not have a button to add another key value pair to that same credential?
Well, I almost question because this is credential. Yeah, it's getting from credential types. That's interesting. If you're doing all in API code, it's simple, but it's the GUI.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it has to support both ways, right? So, like, if it's going to be done, and it's got to be able to support either.
I think we could also involve some of the UX folks on the our team to see if they can help draft something up here. We definitely should think about the UI experience. Oh, so but this feature I think is really cool, and we should try to progress it.
Yeah, and we can certainly do that in several stages because the base work is just to allow you to do a nested block inside your extra vars. That's useful right now for info blocks and various other ones. And it has nothing to do with being able to dynamically do different blocks.
Yeah.
And that just needs the JSON schema validator to be corrected so that we can do that recursive thing in our extra vars. And then the next level is if we want to pursue this at a UI level to do multiple credentials of the same type, that would be the next level.
I think you've done really good work. I just want to chime in really quick and say, like, I want to be encouraging of this because, you know, I totally see it. It's kind of dead obvious. I think it's kind of an easy win, particularly going at it in multiple stages. I think that's very smart because I think that we could, you know, there's like some like minor issues that maybe I could come in and help with that at some point. But then, like, I would love to green light it as much as like at least for the first stage here. I think that's pretty near term, just like you're saying. For the bigger picture, I have like very specific things in my head because we had to do the same thing for vault credentials. Right. So the UI will allow you to attach multiple vault credentials. So I think that what we're doing for that and what the UI is doing for that, it's probably like a really custom thing to say, well, if it's a vault, I'm going to have extra logic in the UI, which is not the best approach because on the backend side, we have for every credential that you create, not a credential type, but for a credential, we produce a hash associated with that credential. And then the rule is that you can't have two credentials that produce the same hash. So I think this is really interesting to me from an implementation standpoint. That's what I get kind of excited about what you're saying about multiple credentials, because I think that from the use of it, what you would see is that the top level keys being the same is what would constitute a conflict.
Right.
Because you could have nested stuff inside of extra vars, but if you have dictionaries, you know, if two things define the same dictionary by the same top level key, they won't merge; they'll overwrite.
Yep.
So you would go by the top level keys, but you're also kind of putting in the idea that you can template in the top level keys. But even if you do that, you could actually render the templates of the top level keys to produce a correctly functioning hash. But that's going way out on the deep end.
That's really interesting, though, Alan. Yeah, because you're right. If the way you determine which credentials you can't put in the same job template is because you actually hashed their contents, then we automatically get the ability to add these two credentials of the same type because they don't produce the same hash.
Yeah. And we could, so I think that we could kind of surface this, like, whatever custom logic the UI has for vault credentials, it's like just we should prefer to have the APIs report like a hash, and that'd be this be generally for credentials like in the abstract. So those are my thoughts. Yeah,
I like it. Very interesting, Alan. Thank you.
The effort you're putting into this. Yeah.
Well,
All
could
right.
I get some support for help of actually finishing this with? I'm kind of stuck on the JSON schema validator. I've tried a few different things, but the way I would normally do a recursive JSON schema doesn't work in this case because the recursing to the top level drops me back into the extra vars file vars environment variables, and I want to just recurse over the extra vars part. I'm struggling with that.
Philip, are you interested in a peer programming session?
Absolutely.
Also, I think we can definitely set something up. Probably, Alan, you up for it, man?
Yeah, I would love to jump into that sort of thing. We get that set up. Yeah, JSON schema. Oh, yeah, we have a lot of history with the JSON schema.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Okay. Well, would you like to reach out to me, Alan, when you're ready?
Yeah. How? Do you know what the mechanic of that would be? Could we just set up?
I think just in element, like we can communicate in matrix, and I think matrix also have meet video meeting capabilities, but we can always open up Google Meet and post it into the element to see if anyone else wants to join the peer programming session. It should be fun too. Thank you guys. Thank you very much for your contribution, Philip, and thank you for being volunteer to peer. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'll ping you guys. Thank you very much.
Okay, so moving on to the next topic in the list. This was actually Hao's topic about adding a retry mechanism. So I'll go ahead and get that PR opened up, and we'll open it up to Hao.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hao Liu. I am an engineer on Ansible Automation Controller team and an open source contributor for AWX. So there's been quite a bit of different ways that our job gets disconnected and then we mark the job failed. Philip actually is one of the first person that brought it to our attention during the Contributor Summit with that problem in Azure. There's a great write-up that he did. I don't know if we have the issue link here, but it's a good read. So basically, there are many different mechanisms where, a little bit of background, I guess. When we start a job on Kubernetes, we open up STD and STD out to that pod running the job, and we try to stream in the data and try to stream out the log for the execution, right? If any of those string gets broken, we just mark the job as failed. And there are many different ways that the string can be broken. For example, if in this issue, I think I mentioned hard-coded 4-hour time limit that's in kubelet. So you can only open up a connection to kubelet for maximum of 4 hours, and log string goes through that, right? So basically, at maximum, you can only run a job for 4 hours, and there are various other ways that this string gets disconnected. Like, for example, job rotation will cause the log string to get disconnected. There is like idle timeouts that exist. So if your job doesn't output log for a certain duration of time, the job will fail. So it started necessitating stuff like, Ansible, don't die, Ansible, which we obviously don't want, right? So this is our attempt to fix this problem, and it is a heck of a saga. The change involves fixes in Kubernetes, fixes in Ansible runner, and also fixes in receptor. So the basic idea behind this fix is relatively simple. Essentially, we are just saying if we're disconnected, well, try to reconnect, right? We are leveraging the Kubernetes log timestamp to determine, okay, when did we disconnected, and then using the timestamp to resume connection. The fix got a little complicated because we found bug within Kubernetes where they start chunking logs, and like, let's say if you have a long log message, they will randomly insert a timestamp in the middle of the log message. And for those of you who are familiar with how like artifact strings back, there is from Ansible runner, there is like a big zip base64 encoded zip data that gets stringed back at the end of the job, right? And if a timestamp gets inserted in the middle, it corrupts the zip package, so causing a job to, fail because we can't decode the zip message. So yeah, a fix went into Kubernetes. We were able to influence a fix in Kubernetes, guys. But yeah, so the problem should be fixed, but we are we tested this pretty thoroughly, but I would like to get some help from the community for people that have ran into this problem before. Please help us test the solution out. There may be edge cases that we didn't think of.
How do you know which versions of Kubernetes that fix got propagated into?
I hope I wrote it in here, but if not, let me flash something up on the screen right quick. Unfortunately, this is an internal Google Doc describing the whole saga. I kind of wish that I can make this document public, or have written it in a place where it's public. So Mr. Gondolo, we might need to look into some methods of making this public. But yeah, so these are the versions that contain the fix within Kubernetes, and for those who cares, in OpenShift. And also the Ansible runner version. So in the latest release of AWX, all the code change should be included. You just need to use the corresponding Kubernetes version. And we did put in some code to detect the Kubernetes API server version that we are like running the job. We are asking to run the job. There is a very big caveat here that like it is possible for kubelet version and kube API server version to be not the same. So you might not be able to rely on the auto detection, is what I'm saying. We did put in a flag to force enable or force disable this feature just in case the auto detection did not pan out well. I really should put this document in public. This also described the flag that for force enable and force disable. Yeah, maybe I just copy and paste the stock into the PR for prosperity after this meeting. Yes, David?
Oh, that's what I was about to suggest, is just put it into GitHub.
Yeah, I will go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I'm very interested in all of that because as you know, we ran into that problem in AKS, and we're going to be redeploying soon, so we would love to be able to test that.
Oh, by the way, a little bit of note. I know that like some cloud kube may not be following the correct Simver schema. I do recall one of the cloud. Okay, yeah, EKS, because they do like minus like the proper version and the minus EKS version, right? But the thing is, in Simver, minus always means pre-release, and if you do Simver comparison, the pre-release will always be less than the actual version. So they don't do Simver correctly. So our auto detection code will most likely failed for those specific edge cases. We kind of expected people to use Simver the right way, you know.
For sure.
So
But
yeah,
you can force the feature on those cases, right? How?
yeah, yes,
We allow.
we did put in a flag to force it, and the force enablement feature does also have gotchas, because we like, if you force enable or force disable it, it essentially does it for every container group. Like, it just skips the check. So like before, right, we will be able to handle the case depend on the version of cluster that we like, the version for the kube cluster that we're talking to. Once you force enable it, we just assume that it's all good. So you cannot have mixed version. Like, if you force enable it, you cannot have mixed version within your container groups. All container group will be treated the same. So
good to know, because we have a wide variety of different clusters of different versions. We would not force enable it then. We would depend on it.
AKS, I think, is one of the ones that did obey the Simver. But like, Philip, if you can help us check, I don't have AKS cluster on hand right now. Just make sure that they obey Simver correctly.
As far as I know, they do, but I'll feed that to my old team.
Yep, thank you. Like, yeah, just like, I know that they post-pen the version, right? But like, if they post-pen with a plus, it's fine. Plus meant to indicate annotation.
But for what it's worth, we are probably moving back to OpenShift for our next cluster. So
awesome, glad to hear that. I worked on that a bit too. Fantastic. All right. Yeah.
We good now?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we had one last topic. We are running out of time. Is NG-BSY here? No. Okay. So that person submitted an issue for us where they were looking for us to basically kind of communicate any known differences between running Ansible from command line versus running Ansible through AWX. And they were suggesting maybe we have like issues opened with a label. We also kicked around the idea of maybe having some kind of document that would explain that. And we just wanted to run it past the community and see what you all think, and if you had a preference or any other suggestions as to how we might track and communicate those.
I know a lot of those things have been documented in various different places, but I do think it would be valuable for the AWX project to maintain a page saying, here's the things that you have to change to run your Ansible playbook in AWX.
Honestly, I was quite shocked when I found that there is a difference. So that absolutely we need to document.
Just try running a playbook with var prompts.
Right. So it's like, I suppose this like is a good place for a call to action, right? Like, for people who have run into differences, let's use this issue as I want to turn this issue into a documentation effort. If anyone else here agrees, like, if you know of any differences, let's gather the information within this issue and let's get a doc together. Again, the issue number is 13272. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, it will be in the description.
Yeah, the other thing is, where's the best place to communicate this? Like in a change log, or probably in a separate porting guide. Like maybe we have a link from the README to a separate markdown, or what are your all's thoughts?
I think it needs to cover the general, like, things that are most applicable that people run across, or questions we come across. Like, I just added to the issue the link to Phil's one local host isn't local host. between the CLI and the execution environments. So one I think trips up a lot of people.
Yep.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, let's gather the information in here and let's make this into something awesome. NGBSY, if you're watching, thank you very much for bringing this up. Before we tie up, there is a couple of things that I would like to ask the community for. So we created, well, like I said earlier, right? The new receptor PR, please help us bang on it with the various like sprawl of kube implementations out there. See if we messed up in any specific cases. So for those of you who are not aware, we have a YouTube channel now. Yay! We posted a couple of videos, and this community recording will be on the YouTube channel as well. We recently opened a pin. There's a pin issue on the top of our repo that we put out for requests for content, right? So if there's any issue, if there's any video that you would love to see about AWX, please comment and upvote in here. And if there's any content that you would like to make for or make with us or for our channel, please reach out to me, Gondolo, John, or Rick on the Element chat, or comment in this issue as well. For those people who want to make content for the channel, you will be receiving angry spots as token of our appreciation. Speaking of token of appreciation, this week we would like to thank Miles for helping maintain our Helm integrations. I would like to send you angry spuds. Gondolo.
Miles had a job. I'll follow up.
DM one of us, your email address, we can get that sorted out for you. But yeah, thank you very much for everything you're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much, Miles. We appreciate your we appreciate your contribution. And Philip, when your thing merged, I'm sure there's a spuds in there for you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and looking forward to our next meeting. We will put the agenda, the new agenda issue up soon. So I see in chat there's a couple of participants that have very interesting topic that they would like to talk about. Yeah, please add it to our next agenda meeting. We're looking forward to discuss those topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jake, do you want to talk about the RDU Ansible meetup real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's no worries. I can happily do so. For anybody who's interested, you do not need to be local. I can call you in or anything. If you'd like to present, just reach out to me. I am at the Double J everywhere. GitHub, Matrix, I am in the rooms everywhere. So if you'd like to present or you have something you would like to present, please reach out to me, or you can post on our meetup discussion board. So it's Ansible RDU. So awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, if anyone's in RDU, I would love to meet you guys in person and maybe buy you guys coffee. All right. Thank you. Gonna close the recording.